We arrived at the farm scene in South Shenango Township as a result of an informant telling us that a likely gravesite was there for a murder victim. We dug in the initial location that had been enumerated by the informant, and we didn't have any luck. But we continued to dig, and ultimately where we ended up striking him is on his left knee. At that point in time, we knew we had a homicide. Ed and Butch were college buddies. They grew up in separate towns, separate parts of the area. Ed came from a family that had some affluence to it. His family owned a furniture store. His father was a county commissioner.
I was the oldest of 6, and I had to learn responsibility early.
The guy was a bodybuilder, found out he was a kickboxer. One of the things that stuck out from Ed was that he had some luxuries that many of us couldn't afford.
But things didn't come easy for us. My dad had me work after school at his furniture store. My little brother, Mike, had a job there too.
Ed's father was a local politician, and I believe that spiked his interest in politics.
If Ed was groomed to go into politics, I was groomed for the football field. I wanted to be like my hero, Joe Montana. Make the folks back in the steel towns proud.
Butch's family was just regular working people in Munhall, Pennsylvania. It's a steel town just outside of Pittsburgh.
Butch was the first person in our household family to ever even go to college, let alone graduate.
Greenville was just a small college town, maybe 5,000 or 6,000 people. And when the school's in, maybe another 1,000.
You meet all types at college, from all over. And that's where I met Butch.
Ed and Butch met in the fall of 1984. Ed, Butch, and myself and Paul were all members of the same pledge class. We all pledged the fraternity together in the spring of 1985. When Ed announced he was going to move into the fraternity house, I think several of us were kind of caught off guard because Edward was very refined. The rest of us were proud to be known as pigs.
Maybe I wasn't the typical frat guy, but these were my friends, especially Butch. I was smarter than Butch in every way, except when it came to women.
Butch always had girlfriends. He was one of the most charming individuals there ever was.
Although we were spending more and more time together, Butch and I were still active in the fraternity. As treasurer of the fraternity our sophomore year, I had learned the fraternity was in debt. We came up with a plan to help the guys out.
Because of his fraternity and student government connections, Ed had gotten hold of a key card to give us access to some of the fraternity houses, including ours.
One thing you can always count on in a frat house: lots of stereos, lots of TVs. We knew the frats all had insurance, so anything missing would be easily replaced.
Ed got his car, they piled everything into the car, took it up to their house and stored it in the attic at the house.
We returned to campus at the end of spring break to find all the electronics and valuables out of these rooms were missing.
Teal College security contacted our department and advised us that there had been some break-ins at some of the fraternities on campus.
When the cops got involved, Butch was starting to lose it, so I took charge.
Ed called his little brother over from Cleveland to help us get rid of the stolen stuff. There was no way we could profit from this now, or help out the frat with their debts.
One of the officers doing the investigation determined that somebody had to have a pass key to make entry into there because there was no forced entry in either of the buildings. Just didn't have a list of anybody that had access to the keys at the time.
Our junior year ended, and nothing happened. Nobody knew what Ed and I had done, except for Ed's girlfriend and his brother.
I knew that Butch was going to graduate from Teal College and that he had planned on going to graduate school to pursue a master's degree.
And that's when I met Linda Carlin.
Linda was running the gym where we worked out, and we saw her all the time.
She was a fairly affluent person. She had nice cars, multiple homes that she lived in.
Ed started spending less time with his on-campus girlfriend and more time with Linda Carlin. Linda got him a job at a furniture store she managed.
She had a tremendous influence over Ed.
Ed chose Linda over the girl he'd been seeing on campus, the same girl who knew the truth about the frat house burglaries. I started to get worried she might rat us out in order to get back at Ed.
Our senior year, Ed's ex-girlfriend comes up to me and drops a bomb. Tells me that it was Ed and Butch who had ripped off the two fraternity houses. I, along with the executive council, believe the only thing that we could do and the morally, safe thing to do was to blackball them, to exclude them from the fraternity. They were no longer considered members of our fraternity.
One of the other officers on our department was a former fraternity brother of their fraternity, and he knew of them, and he thought they were both pretty good guys.
Next thing you know, we're graduating, and no charges have been brought against either one of these two.
The first time I met Linda Corlin was at the graduation, and got to know that apparently she was Ed's companion, girlfriend.
Lynn had this, weird power over both of us, but right around the time we graduated, it crossed the line.
We knew Lynn was having financial troubles with the furniture store, but when she called us into her office and was talking about debts, insurance money, her message was clear. She needed a fire.
In May 22nd of 1988, at about 2:10 in the morning, the warehouse behind the Old Town Furniture Building caught on fire and burned to the ground. We did bring Butch in, we talked to him, he denied any knowledge of it. He was pretty nervous throughout the whole interview, but he basically wasn't gonna give Ed up on anything. I told Butch that we would probably be filing charges on him, and he understood that. He was released on, I think, $3,000 bond on his own recognizance.
I went back to my hometown outside Pittsburgh to stay with my mom. I was through with Greenville.
Butch asked me, "So, Mom, would you mind if I go away for the weekend?" And I said, no. He went on a Greyhound bus with a duffel bag.
There was a girl I'd met through Ed who lived in Akron, and she invited me to come see her.
It's her and another girl that picked Butch up at a bus station, and they drive out to a wooded area.
The girls told me they knew about a party out here, but they needed to make a pit stop first.
Butch got out of the car. The door slammed, the car drove away.
I found myself face to face with my best friend.
I set the whole thing up. I told those girls I needed to talk to Butch. I knew he didn't want to see me after everything that had happened, so I had to do it this way.
Ed brought along his little brother, Michael, the same kid who helped us out after the break-in.
A fight ensued between Butch and Ed. Mike could see that the two of them were fighting. He had seen Ed hit Butch and knock him down. And the next thing he saw was Ed strike Butch in the head with the gun. Struck him in the head with enough force that Butch went down on the ground in a crumbled position, and then he started to beat on him. Ed actually took Butch's face and slammed it into a piece of pipe that was part of the well apparatus there, and repeatedly did that. Mike felt certainly at that point in time that Butch was either dead or dying.
They handcuffed me and tied my feet together with a necktie. And then they went to meet up with Linda. They decided to bury my body, and Linda knew just the place, a farm north of Greenville where she used to live. They picked a secluded spot near a stream.
Ed put the body in the ground, and the hole wasn't quite right, and he had to jump up and down on him to get him to fit into the hole that he had dug.
When I went to law school in the fall, I broke it off with Linda. I had moved on. I guess she hadn't.
And at that point in time, she told us that she was present when Mr. Butch was taken to the farm scene and buried there, and that she disclosed that day that Ed Swagger was the person that actually killed Butch.